Let me just tell let me tell my workers to go down a little there. Hold on a second. Sorry about that, guys. Gotta get things done while you can. The Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee meeting is now called to order. Let's just take a moment of silence. Amen. I too would like to welcome the new committee members. This committee, as you know, makes grants to our art community, which is a very important part of our culture in the city. So it's a fun committee. I think you guys will have a good time going through the applications and making recommendations on who we think is best to culturally enhance our community. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Amy and Kathy. Amy, are you there? Kathy?
I am here.
Okay.
I just got to turn on my camera.
Okay. We can get
rushing around.
Okay. You're on.
All right, we're all here. There. Okay, are we ready to start?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. If I can figure out how to do that, I should have rehearsed. Make sure I get the right screen. Okay, can y'all see that?
Yes.
All right.
Hey,
So,
Kathy, can you introduce the new members of the committee for us?
we will get there in just a second, council member.
Okay.
The first thing we're gonna do is review the agenda. So are y'all seeing the agenda now?
Yes.
Okay, so Councilmember Gregory, I will let you start with the moment of silence and then I'll take over after that.
We did that already.
Oh, I missed it. Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Sorry.
All right.
All right, so I think everybody probably has figured out that Councilmember Gregory is the chairman of this committee. We have some new members this year. So I'll let each of you, maybe we'll go in order of how your name is listed on the slide there. And if you will introduce yourself and maybe tell us just a little about your connection to the tourism industry or what you can add to this committee.
Good afternoon. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, good afternoon. My name is Mamie Bush. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for the Hilton Garden Inn Charleston Waterfront in downtown Charleston. I am a Benia. I was born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina, graduate of Winthrop University. I've been in the hospitality industry since I was in college, believe it or not. So really excited to be here. In addition, full disclosure, I'm also a member of the Charleston Wine and Food Festival Board. So anything that comes up regarding that particular festival, I will be recusing myself from. But I just am really glad to be here and excited about the opportunity and look forward to working with everyone.
Hi, am I on? This is Edward Condon.
You're on.
Yes.
Okay. I am currently owner of the Triangle Char and Bar in West Ashley. previous to that, I had restaurants in downtown Charleston for 36 years. Everything from A.W. Shucks to Tommy Condon's to Bocce's. And currently, ironically, right now I'm in Richmond, Virginia at my restaurant in Richmond doing the Zoom meeting. I've been a past chairman of the CVB and anyway, I've been in the hospitality business for about 40 years. So, and I'm glad to still be involved.
Ben, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay.
My name is Ben D'Alessandro. I am from Philadelphia originally. I own a pizzeria downtown, and my family and I live downtown. And I am constantly in the streets of downtown and see how tourism fluctuates throughout the year, and like to provide insight. That's all I got.
Amy?
I'm done. Oh, okay.
Okay, Jamie?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie DeWitt. I'm also a local Charlestonian, born and raised, graduate of the College of Charleston and University of South Carolina. My past career has been sort of all over the map. I worked for retired former United States Senator Fritz Hollings and helped with a lot of his local grants in the arts arena for the Charleston area. And then most recently, I'm a financial and budget analysis consultant for Booz Allen Hamilton here in Charleston. So I hope that I'm able to bring some good insight to the committee and look forward to working with you all.
Hi, everybody. My name is Casey Lavin. I've lived in Charleston for a dozen years, moved away, and then came back for what is the last time I'll ever move away from the city, but glad to be here. My role is I'm president of BMOC Hospitality. So we are a hospitality company. We just bought the Charleston Place Hotel, and we just bought another hotel down on the water that's under construction called the Cooper. We have a couple other restaurants and things that are being built as we speak here in the city. And we also operate the stadium out at Daniel Island, among other things, and honored to be a part of this very important committee. Thank you.
And I don't think we have Paul on. We don't have Paul on.
Okay. So we do have a quorum, so we're okay to proceed. So I will go on with the slideshow then. Thank y'all all for introducing yourselves, and for the new members, welcome to the committee. And we will talk a little bit about your duties and all that a little bit later in this meeting, but we're going to move on with our major business that we're here to. But first we have to introduce us. So we have Amy Wharton, who is our Chief Financial Officer for the city. Amy, you're there, right?
I am here. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome. I'm Kathy Mercer. I'm the budget director, and I'm also, for many, many years, have been the accommodations tax accountant. So I guess for lack of a better word, I am the resident expert on accommodations tax for the city, at least. Probably not for anybody else, but for us. And Cherry Ann, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Cherry Ann Caton is our grants compliance manager, and she helps out with the accommodations tax grant process that we generally have every year. We haven't the past couple of years, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And we may have some other people who have joined us. Matt Froelich, our Deputy Chief Financial Officer, may be here.
He's in another meeting.
Okay. Andrew Jones, who's my Deputy Budget Director, was going to just sit in and get a feel for how this committee runs today. And then Rick Giroux, the Senior Advisor to the Mayor. Rick, are you here?
You're muted.
Kathy, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. It's hard to see on the screen. I haven't done this before. I don't see everybody. Okay. Well, we'll keep going with the slideshow. The first thing we normally talk about is revenue projections and how that affects what we can budget. So just to give y'all some history here, in 2019, the revenue that we received was $7.7 million. In 2020, the total we received is 4.4. Now this revenue is received directly from the state. The state collects the accommodations tax money from the hotels and does a little magic with it. They keep a little bit for some functions at the state level, which is supporting PRT and some other organizations that help promote tourism. And then they divide out the revenue so that every county in the state gets at least a minimum of $50,000. So that means that the larger counties, such as us in Horry County and I think Richland County, sometimes have to donate some of the revenue that we would be accrued to us to make sure that these other counties get at least that $50,000 minimum. So that is what the state does at their level, you know, before we ever get the money, and they pay us on a quarterly basis. So the first payment we received in 2020 was actually for December 2019 through February 2020. So it was actually prior to the pandemic. So that was a normal amount of revenue received. And then after, everything just plummeted. And so the total we got was 4.4. So without that first quarter that was probably pretty normal, we feel like we would have been closer to $3.5 million. So that in turn is what led us to budget 2021 at $3.6 million. We were hoping it would pick back up, but obviously this time last year when we were working on the 2021 budget, we really did not know, as y'all can probably understand, what the future would bring. So when we were working on the 2021 amended budget, which we do, you know, we amend the budget every year pretty much to true up the amount of revenue we've actually received or expect to receive, and any expenditures that came up during the year that were not included in the original budget. So when we started working on the 2021 amended budget, we had received 2 quarters of revenue from the state at that time, which totaled $3.855 million. So that's how we ended up with our projection for 2021 amended revenue, as you'll see at the bottom bullet, of $6.59 million. Now, we received the 3rd quarter payment this week. It was about a month later than the state normally sends to us, or we would have had time to update the budget to reflect that. But we just got it this week. It was higher than we expected. So our total to date for 3 quarters this year is almost $6.2 million. We still have 1 quarter remaining to be received, and that will be, hopefully we'll get it in late January. It's for the last quarter of the year. So that means that since we started out with a budget of $3.6 million, we will have some leftover funding, and we will discuss that later.
Hey, Kathy, can I just interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
So just as a point of reference, we've been kind of watching the revenues to see how much growth we've lost over time. And so before we got this latest check, we were, for accommodations tax, we were about at our 2016 numbers. Is that right, Kathy? Was it?
Yeah.
So we were back at our 2016 numbers, just as a point of reference. For hospitality, we were back around 2019. So that's why we were being so conservative with our budgeting, just because of the loss of growth over time. But it seems to be picking back up now. So a little bit better than we anticipated. So anyway, just wanted to throw that in there.
Right. So I think as we go to the next slide, if you'll look at that 2019 number again, the 7.7 million that we received, you will see that on the next slide, we are projecting that for 2022, we'll get a lot closer to that. So when we did the 2022 revenue projection, that was based on those first 2 quarters of 2021. So that led us to budgeting $6.92 million. That budget will be going to council next week, pending approval of this committee today. And again, it was based on the first 2 quarters, which I see now it says that twice, but that's okay. And we just received that 3rd quarter check, taking that into account, we expect that our revenue for 2022 will be closer to $8 million. But we're going to leave the budget for 2022 as it is now, because if y'all have read the state law and studied the information that we've given you, you'll remember that 5% of this revenue goes into the general fund. So that's why we're leaving it as is, because the general fund budget has been completed and we don't want to change that right now. And so we'll talk about maybe amending the budget later, but we have recommendations on how we will use these additional funds on the next slide. So here we go. So due to the revenue decline that we experienced in 2020, we did not do a grant application process for 2021. Normally we open up a grant application process during the summer where arts related and tourism related nonprofits can apply for funding. Based on what happened in 2020, we really did not expect that we would have enough funding for that in 2021. We have other obligations, as you see on the you'll see on the budget that we're going to show you in a minute.
So Kathy, I'm just going to interrupt again. I'm sorry. So normally we, like in 2020, we would do the grant process in July, with them being due towards the end of August. So for the 2021 year. So we were right in the midst of the pandemic at that point in time. And that's why we did not do any grant process at all for 2021. And we were still watching how our accommodations tax monies were coming in, and decided we would do a grant application process later if it was looking like we were coming back. So that's kind of what we were doing now, but I'll let Kathy finish talking about that. Just so you understand the timeline of where we were and why we decided not to do a grant process.
Right. So we did not do one, as Amy said, for 2022, because that would have been done back in the summer of this year. And we just didn't know where our revenues were going to be. And we have these other obligations. You know, the law requires us to give 30% of our funds to our designated tourism promotion agency, which is the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and then the 5% to the general fund. And then we have some bond payments that we are paying. So those other obligations we felt did not leave enough funding to award grants with the information we had at the time. So now we are proposing, since our revenues are coming in much stronger than we anticipated, yay, that we open up the application process in early January of 2022 to use the funding that we anticipate we will have left over from 2021, and also some of the anticipated leftover funding we should have in 2022. That process would require that this committee review the applications that we receive, and normally it's about 50 applications, so it is quite a few. The staff will review those applications and read them and make sure they're eligible, but the committee receives copies of all of them, and we ask that you review them too. And then we would meet probably in March of 2022 to make recommendations on grant awards for those, based on those applications that we would receive. And that would require us to amend the 2022 budget at that time to include both the grant awards and also any additional revenue, as we were talking about on the previous slide. So as I mentioned, grants are awarded to nonprofits that promote tourism or provide services for tourists. Things like the Charleston Museum, the Gibbs Art Gallery. I had a list of them here. The aquarium, the large festival, Seaweed, Wine and Food, Spoleto, plus a lot of the other smaller arts groups and nonprofits that just provide the culture in Charleston that everybody comes to see and to visit. That's what draws everybody here. So that's why we are supporting them, because that in turn promotes tourism, which is what the law wants us to do. The state law requires that we do with this funding. So next slide. So now we're going to look at the 2021 amended budget. As I mentioned, the original amount of revenue was 3.6 million. Now we're estimating it to be closer to 6.590. At least that's what we're amending the budget to at this point. And you'll see that that also creates a change in the 30% that goes to the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the 5% that goes to the general fund. And then the rest of the funds are used for debt service, for the construction of the International African American Museum, and also Gibbs Art Museum and Aquarium Bond. We did some renovation. We provided some money for them to do renovations of those facilities a few years ago. And that's the debt payment for it. And we also provide support to our own festivals, Piccolo Moja, Charleston Farmers Market, Christmas in Charleston, etc., through our Office of Cultural Affairs. The Dash Shuttle that Carter runs that is free in the downtown area is also supported by funding from this accommodations tax, because in order to make that shuttle free and available for visitors, then we had to provide funding to Carter to cover the fare box loss that they would suffer from making it free. So that leaves potentially $1.9 million, but with the additional revenue we expect, it'll be a higher number than that. That would be available for those arts grants and aid. If we open up that process in 2022, we'll use this leftover money. So anybody have any questions about the 2021 amended budget?
So Kathy, the idea would be that with the $2 million or $1.5 million that you're anticipating, we would amend the budget to, if it was $8 million. Still the 35% goes back to the CDB and general fund, leaving the balance of whatever it is, 800 grand, that would go to the surplus down below. So basically we would have 2.7 million.
Yeah, we would just roll the surplus from 2021 over into 2022 and use it in 2022.
Got it. Okay.
So do we have a motion to approve this budget?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
All right. Then we'll move on to 2022. So here's the proposed budget for 2022. And as we talked about a few minutes ago, we really think the revenue is going to be higher, but we will amend the budget during 2022 when we have a little bit better idea. So we get some interest income that has to be included, and then we have the same basic expenditures that we had for 2021. We have the 30% to the CBD, 5% to the general fund, and then the debt service payments we talked about a minute ago, the cultural festivals fund, our festivals that we put on as a city, and then the Dash Shuttle. So that would use up all but about $2 million of that money, and then we will have some additional revenue also. Any questions on the 2022 proposed budget?
So Kathy, is that the amount that we're going to have competed for in starting when, in January?
We're going to take what we have left over for 2021, which we'll know better what that is by then, because we should have the final payment sometime in January for 2021. And then we will use part of this leftover money in 2022, from 2022, to also fund those grants. I don't think we want to go with all of it at the very beginning of the year. We want to make sure that something doesn't happen to affect the revenues, further into the year.
Sure.
So we'll probably maybe use half of what we expect to have extra in 2022, and then maybe save the other half for the next year.
Okay.
And just also to add that it has to be used within 2 years. And so another thought process for us is to kind of spread this out a little bit more, to give our normal applicants more, to get them started back up again. And then in 23 or 24, we'll be back to kind of a normal application process.
I want to if I may, I want to make sure I'm understanding the timeline correctly. We've kind of bounced around that a little bit. So I'm just trying to make sure I grasp that specifically. So we just approved for what's left over for 2021. We just approved that amount, the amended budget for that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when we're talking about 2022, you had said that there would be funds from 2021 left over that we would have in 2022. I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding that the available potential for arts grants and aid, I see what you provided us is $1.9 million essentially. So and we know that there's going to be possibly more added to that because we know that everything hasn't come in yet. Am I understanding correctly so far?
Yes.
Well, let me go back a little bit because I think that did get confused a little bit. So what we were saying about amending is because now that we have the extra information that we didn't have when we put the 2022 budget together, that when we come back to amend the 2022 budget for the applicants, that we would amend the dollar amount of revenue. So it's more the 2022 budget that we were talking about in terms of amending, not 2021. That makes more sense. So when we can adjust the revenue projection at that time, anything that's left over from 2021 would just go into fund balance that we could utilize. That makes sense.
Yes, I was
Okay.
getting really confused. I was like, wait a second, I know my years, but what's going on?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
okay,
it was
no, perfect.
confusing. You were
Perfect.
right. It was confusing. So I hope I cleared that up.
You did. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
You're welcome.
Any more questions?
And in the future too, hopefully we won't be working in 2 years at the same time as well. So it will kind of all level back out again. It's just been a weird couple of years.
That's putting it mildly. Any other questions for either Kathy or Amy?
Yes, sir.
If not, we need a motion.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second,
Okay, Mamie. It's been moved and properly seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye.
aye.
The ayes have it.
Okay. So now we'll move on to other business. So the new members just got approved by City Council at the last council meeting. So this has kind of been a rushed procedure, a rushed process to get the new members here as part of the committee and get them to this meeting. So normally we have an orientation for new members. Mamie, I think this will make you feel better, that we would go over the state law with you and explain our process and the order that things happen in and all that, and give you a chance to ask a lot of questions. So since we know that we're going to be amending the budget if we have a grant process going on, this, from January through say March or so, it usually takes a few months to get those applications in and reviewed and everything. Then we will have an orientation session for y'all, probably in February or March, so that it's prior to reviewing the application, so you'll understand a little bit more about what's going on. And then the committee will meet and make a grant award recommendations to the city. Now, everything this committee is an advisory committee, so they make recommendations to the city. And then we hope for 2023 that we will return to our normal schedule, which means that applications for the 2023 budget year would be due actually in July or August of 2022. And I could have put the year on there and it probably would have made more sense. But anyway, so that means we probably will have another advisory committee meeting next November to approve the 2023 budget, and of course, as part of that, review those applications and make recommendations about what should be included in that budget. Anybody have any questions about any of this or any other questions?
Amen.
All right, that's all that I have.
Does any of the new members have any questions? I think that things will be much better once you get the orientation. This is sort of hitting you dry. But we'll compensate for that once you get your orientation. I think you'll feel a bit more comfortable with the entire process.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Anything else to come before this committee? Kathy or Amy, any of the members? If not, this meeting's adjourned. You guys have a good holiday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You as well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.